In this third module of Chapter 8 on human reproduction, Module 8.3, I will discuss the basics, including birth intervals, the age schedule of reproduction, and examples taken from age-specific reproductive data in French-Canadian women. Basic intervals. The general patterns of natural fertility in humans include some that are part of our primate phylogenetic legacy and some that are unique to Homo sapiens, and include late sexual maturation, that is from 15 to 18 years, heteroparity, that is multiple birth events, low fecundity, long gestational time, that is 9 months, singleton births usually, prolonged parental care and lactation, long birth intervals around 3 years, extended reproductive span from ages 15 to around 50 in women, low total reproductive output, and long post-reproductive life for females. All great apes produce only singleton offspring with no overlap in parental care among offspring. The events determining the reproductive lifespan and rate of childbearing in modern humans is shown in this idealized schematic. The reproductive years start at menarche, after which a woman forms a union, that is marries, and becomes at risk for childbearing until the onset of menopause, or sterility. Women are reproductive at a rate related to the average duration of the birth interval, the length of which is determined by 3 components. First, postpartum infecundable interval, which is primarily a function of breastfeeding behavior. Second, waiting time to conception, which is called the fecundable interval and is a function of natural fecundability and frequency of intercourse. And third, full-term pregnancy, a segment that is typically 9 months. Time can be added to the birth interval due to intrauterine deaths that adds gestation time from conception to the intrauterine death, the time to return to ovulation, and the conception weight. Thus, the timing of menarche and menopause determines the duration of the reproductive period, and the other factors determine the rate of childbearing and the duration of the birth intervals. This graphic shows an event history chart of reproduction in French-Canadian women from the 17th and 18th centuries. We have age on the x-axis from 0 to 100 years. Survival on the y-axis, where the horizontal lines depict individual lifespans, with each yellow tick indicating a birth at a specific age relative to the overall lifespan. And the lifelines are ranked from top to bottom from shortest to longest lived. Note, reproduction begins for most in their late teens and ends in their late 40s. This graphic shows the probability of one of these French women having a child is strongly influenced by her age, an example of which is shown for these French-Canadian women in the 17th and 18th century. Note that the fertility of this specific population of women was extraordinarily high, 8 to 9 children per woman, relative to most populations, including indigenous peoples and historical populations. The onset of reproduction occurs in the early to middle teens, rises rapidly through the early to mid-20s, remains high but relatively constant from the mid-20s through the late 30s, and then decreases to 0 by age 50 years. Note the graph. The x-axis is age in years. The y-axis is proportion of different reproductive parity proportions, including the fraction of women from 0, 1 to 3, 4 to 6, 7 to 9, 10 to 12, and greater than 12 children at different ages. The parity compositions by age for these French-Canadian women reveals that by age 30, the majority of women had given birth to from 4 to 6 children, and a small fraction of these women had 7 to 9 children. By age 40, nearly 3 of 4 women had produced 7 to over 12 children. By age 50, when their reproductive lives were completed, nearly half had 10 or more children, with 17% having over 12 children. Note that over 10% of women aged 35 had 10 or more children. Only 7% had 1 to 3 children, and 5%, or 1 out of 20, were childless. Of those who bore children, the average woman had her first child at age 22 and her last child at age 38, with an average birth interval of 21 months. This ends this third module from Chapter 8 on human reproduction.